Hi,
Hi,
I'm Nick,
I'm Jill,
and
and
we're
we're
Hipstrings.
Hipstrings.
Yes. So, what are we doing today?
So tonight we're talking about thinking about your yarn structure before you start spinning singles. So some people will just spin singles and then decide how many plies, how they're going to make their yarn in the end. And I'm here to tell you that that's not really the best idea, because the singles for a 2-ply yarn versus the singles for a 3-ply yarn need to be spun differently.
What?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're planning far ahead again. Man, I have to say, if you are watching this as we're putting it out here, I apologize, because to me this would be maddening. Waiting multiple days. Okay, I'm looking for stuff. Okay, I've got my pile. Wait, no, I got to rearrange my pile. Wait, no, now I have to. I can't just start spinning. I got to think about, do I want 2-ply or 3-ply? So thank you for your patience. Hopefully it'll all be worth it.
Yeah, I know people have started doing their fiber prep and started getting their blend on. So, and
Okay.
I started spinning today, so because
you
I have a lot more fiber to get through than I thought. I have more like 2 pounds, and if I'm going to complete it on time, I need to get started. So I have I think I spun about 3 ounces of it today. So I've got to start. So, but staying on yarn structure, I'm going to focus on just talking about 2-ply versus 3-ply, and we're not talking about toilet paper tonight. Okay?
Otherwise it'd be very hard to find here.
Yeah. So I know there are a lot of spinners out there that have one type of plying that they like to do, and that's what they always do, no matter what they're planning on doing with their yarn. For a lot of people, you know, I've met people who have been spinning for 30 years and they've never done anything other than a 2-ply yarn, which is shocking to me. But there are reasons to do a 2-ply versus a 3-ply. I have my own kind of gospel about it. But ultimately it comes down to, what do you want to do with your yarn? Different yarn structures are better for different types of projects. If you're going to be knitting lace, or if you're going to be weaving, a 2-ply is best. If you want to maintain more color separation, like in this yarn, so this is warm woolen mittens, this is the fiber, this is a 2-ply spun from the fold, so this had spun pretty bulky. This is about a worsted weight yarn. You get a lot of color separation, whereas this is the same fiber spun up in a 3-ply and very thin, and you can see this has a lot more color mixing than what you would expect to see from this yarn.
Now, was this spun from the tip, though?
This is spun from the tip.
So, like,
this is the most color mixing.
The most mixing, the least mixing. Well, I guess technically this is the least mixing, but after it's spun.
Yeah, but this shows you that the thicker your singles are, the more color separation you're going to have. The thinner they are, the more color mixing you're going to have.
And is that is it fair to say that that is because you have more different things per inch in your view area?
Kind of, yeah. It's optical blending. With this, you're having thinner sections, and so they're getting mixed more. And so with 3, you have 3 things that are kind of blending together when you look at it, for optical blending, that your eye is going to blur those all together, versus 2-ply, you just have 2 different sets of color at a time.
Now, what if you had the okay, so we're getting really deep before we talk a lot about it. So let's first ask the 2-ply versus 3-ply. Before we get into some of these details, we can talk. We can review that the 3-ply tends to get more optical blending. The 2-ply less.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything in terms of drape or squishiness that you can adjust with those?
A 2-ply is going to have more drape than a 3-ply. A 2-ply is also going to show more wear. If it's a fiber that's prone to pilling, it's more likely to pill as a 2-ply compared to a 3-ply. And that's just because more of each individual staple length is exposed with a 2-ply yarn versus a 3-ply yarn. So with a 3-ply yarn, the other plies protect kind of part of it, and so there isn't as much of a chance for that fiber to kind of come out and fuzz up, or a shortcut to release itself and form into a pill.
Okay. So because everything is nestling into each other, you get a little bit more wear out of a 3-ply than a 2-ply.
Yeah, and so a 3-ply is better suited for things like sweaters, gloves, cables, that kind of stuff. Yep. It creates a more round yarn, whereas the 2-ply is a flatter yarn.
Oh, okay, that is something I can draw. I was trying to figure out something that I can draw, right? So if I think about, let me see if I can draw this well, right? So if you're thinking about a 2-ply versus a 3-ply, okay?
Yeah, if you look at the cross section.
This is, I took a 2-ply and a 3-ply and cut it in half, right? And you can see here that this is more round, this is more ovular. Obviously, it's not going to really be like that because the individual singles are not rigid and hard tubes, but you're going to have some effect like this because of the fact that they're while they are twisting, actually probably circles is a bad way of demonstrating. It's more like ovals because as they're twisting around each other, the cross section is a little bit wider.
Yeah.
But you get the idea. Just from what's nestling together, you're going to have a different look to it, different roundness to it. Okay, so did I ask the question? Is that a little fluffier as well?
A 3-ply, yes.
Right.
A little bit more insulating.
Okay.
2-ply will open up more. So it's better for things like lace. It creates better holes. It kind of the twist is more. I don't know exactly how to explain it. All I know is that 2-plies work better for lace. They create bigger holes than a 3-ply.
So better stitch definition, I think is what you're going for. Is that
stitch
true?
Definition is going to be better in a 3-ply generally.
Okay.
For like textured, if you're doing something like a Guernsey sweater or cabled sweater, it's going to be better with a 3-ply than a 2-ply.
Okay. And
why that's is that? Because the yarn is more round.
Okay. All right. So the opening is more the fact that because it is, did you say it's more able to stretch along the axis and then you can get bigger holes with that? Is that what you're trying to go for?
Yeah.
Okay.
Something like that.
All right. So we already have a couple of comments. Summerhill Spinner is saying, here, I can't wait. Kathleen Klein, good way to demonstrate this is with marled yarns. 2-colored ply versus 3 or more colors in the plies.
Right. That's kind of the the most basic. In my experience, most of my mashups have all been 3-plies because they've all gone into sweaters, most of them. And so if you're looking for a more uniform yarn, a 3-ply is the way to go. And this is why we talked about color theory, is much more important for a 3-ply where you're going to have more optical blending than a 2-ply where you're doing simple barber pulling. And there's not as much optical blending. But you may get hit if you have those complementary colors right on top of each other. That may be harder to control in a 2-ply than a 3-ply, where it might become more like a split complementary triad.
Oh, so that's an interesting aspect. And I'm trying to think of another way to frame that. And if you have these contrasting colors,
if you have complementary colors.
If you've got complementary colors, right, in 2-ply, there's nothing to mix that up.
They're going to be jarring,
right? Especially, and I think I did a 2-ply for my 12 days, or did I? Yeah, I did a 2-ply, didn't I? Yeah. And it is definitely jarring when it matches up that I get something that's complementary. I like that because it really creates a pop, so it's not a bad thing, but it's something that you need to be aware of, because if you're trying to pick colors that don't create that jarring iridescent pop or something, you're going to be surprised if these things accidentally mix up when you're doing your plying,
Mm-hmm.
right? So just be aware of that, and that a 3-ply, if you've got the two that are complementary, that third one will sort of mix it out because of your previous color selection. It's more
It's
likely to
proportions.
be, there's the proportions, but it's also more likely to be this, oh crap, I forgot the word, you just said it. The, not complementary, but
A split complementary.
split complementary, thank you.
Yeah.
Um,
So let's talk about grist and how far your yarn's going to go with a 2-ply versus 3-ply. Since
before we get into that,
yeah,
I do want to ask a silly question.
yeah,
All right. So we are focusing on 2-ply versus 3-ply.
yeah.
Why not single, and why not 4-ply or more?
Okay, a single, which isn't, it's not a ply because there's no plying involved. Um, are inherently unbalanced. They're kind of a pain in the butt to spin. They require a lot of control, and they don't wear very well.
Because you don't have the strength of the other
Right.
plies
Well, and
to
the
go
entire
through.
staple is exposed
Mm-hmm.
to the environment, so there's no protection. So it's very likely to pill. 4-plies, yes, you can do 4-plies. I think the only 4-ply I've done is a cabled ply. But we're going to keep it simple to just 2 or 3-ply. 4-plies are going to be harder wearing and even better stitch definition.
But in order to get something that's a reasonably small, delicate end yarn, you got to spin really, really thin, right?
Right, and
so,
it can be hard
like
for
dental
hand
floss.
spinners to put the right amount of twist so that a 4-ply doesn't end up rope-like.
That's an interesting aspect. Yeah. So the
And
the
very,
sweet
very
spot
dense.
of being able to do something yourself is within the 2 or 3-ply.
Right.
Okay.
So let's talk a little bit about 2-ply versus 3-ply. In terms of density, because I know a lot of people are like, well, I want my fiber to go as far as possible, so let me spin a 2-ply. And that's true. You will get better yardage out of a 2-ply than a 3-ply. My argument is if you spin to the right amount of twist in a 3-ply, so that you're not overspinning it, it will be nice and lofty, and it will take up a lot of space, and so that when you are knitting, your final project will knit up sooner and will take less yardage, but it will still get you to that final garment with the same weight of fiber.
So I think it's important to note, you're not talking about the same single size where you're taking the same single and doing 2-ply versus 3-ply.
No.
Right? You're talking about getting the same final yarn. Mm-hmm. So if you're going for a bulky or a worsted or fingering or whatever, that you are targeting.
Yeah, you'll get more yardage with a 2-ply than a 3-ply. That's just how it goes. It's how the math works out. But honestly, in my experience, mostly what I spin is 3-plies. And I get close to commercial type grist, yardage per pound.
So let's define grist, right? Just to make sure everybody's on the same page here.
So grist is yards per pound. It's kind of a metric for density. It's going to depend on what your fiber is. Certain fibers are always going to be kind of more dense than others. Things like alpaca, silk. It also depends on how you spin. A woolen draft is always going to have a higher yardage per pound than a worsted draft. So it's a good metric for yarns to understand what they're like. It's extremely important when you're talking about stuff like yarn substitution.
But that's another show.
That's another show. We'll talk about that on picking a pattern, which is the last live stream we'll do. But I also like sometimes you do want something that is a lower grist, something that's lower yards per pound. A 2-ply fingering weight sweater, if your default is about, I'm trying to think. If your default is about, in the 11 to 14 wraps per inch, we'll get into this next time. If you do a 2-ply, you're going to be ending up getting something that's like a fingering weight. Fingering weight sweaters can be lovely. They take forever to knit. They're not necessarily as warm. They have a lot more drape. They don't necessarily have the structure that you want, and they're going to wear faster than a 3-ply. So at the same kind of wraps per inch of singles, you could apply it to a 3-ply and get something that's kind of in the DK worsted range, which is a very lovely sweater weight, doesn't take forever to knit up, and will wear very well.
Okay. So
don't try to just stretch out as much yardage as possible out of a spin. It's really about creating the yardage and the type of yarn that you want for a particular project.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things I want to hit on there. Then, first is just to reiterate, grist is yards per pound, right? So if you think about that, if I take the same number of pounds and I get more yards out of that, it's a much thinner, denser yarn, or
not necessarily
denser. It's a much thinner yarn, typically.
Yeah. You're gonna have to put more twist into it
and
for a 2-ply
when
than a
you
3-ply.
knit up the final project, because it's a thinner yarn for the same amount of weight, you will have let's say if you're making a longer tube for the same fiber, which typically seems good, but it's not going to be very, you were saying it's not going to be very warm, it's not going to be very thick.
It's not going to be as warm, it's not going to be thick, it's not going to wear as well.
Okay. There's a couple of other things, but I lost them. We'll get back to it.
Well, somebody was asking why not pick a pattern first so you know what you want to spin. I think picking a pattern before you've spun and have a finished yarn is really aspirational.
It's a great idea.
It's a great idea.
If you can do it,
but
go for it.
Yarn has the way of surprising you based on the fiber. If you want to pick a pattern before you spin an entire sweater quantity, what you're going to want to do is spin a sample first. Spin up at least an ounce. Ply it how you think it needs to be plied. Wash it, everything. Knit up a swatch and
do the full
swatching experience to see whether or not it knits up at the gauge that you want. Because with hand spun yarn, just it being the right thickness doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to knit up how you want it to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a whole bunch of factors to this, right? There is, when you spin it, you've got your single, then you're going to ply it. So that's going to be slightly different than what you expect it to be.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're going to wash it.
It's going to bloom some amount, which is going to depend on how you spun it and what fiber it is.
Right. Then you're going to knit it.
Yeah.
Then you're going to block that. So there's 3, 4, 5 steps in which the fiber is going to change. Or I should say the yarn is going to change, right?
Yeah.
So it is absolutely a fantastic aspiration. But do you think you're there yet?
I
know I'm not there yet.
I could spin for a pattern.
Yeah.
If it falls along my defaults and it's I spun this fiber before, this is what I default spin it as, and I watch it very carefully and I know how much it's going to bloom and all that stuff. But that requires a lot of personal experience, and your experience is going to be different than any other hand spinner because you spin differently than anybody else does. And I've gotten the chance to work with other people's hand spun, and it is so very different than working with my own hand spun.
So Angela, thank you. You reminded me of one of the things that I had forgotten that I was going to ask. So you talk about, I mean, this whole live stream, the intent is uh, picking your yarn structure, 2-ply versus 3-ply
Yeah.
before you get there. But you just mentioned this aspect of if I take my natural single and I then spin it up as a 2-ply versus 3-ply, how do you go from that standpoint of, okay, I've got my natural single, this is how I normally spin.
Okay.
Do I need to do anything different when I go for a 2-ply or a 3-ply?
Yeah, so my default for spinning is to do 3-ply yarn. My singles, the amount of twist I put them in them, which is a lower amount of twist than you would for a 2-ply yarn, they fly really nicely as a 3-ply yarn. If I go and I take my default spinning and I make a 2-ply yarn out of it, it is very often underplied. I just don't put that much twist in my 2-plies. So if I'm making a 2-ply yarn, I have to consciously make sure that I'm putting enough twist for it to be a 2-ply yarn.
So how would you know? And you're saying enough twist in the single or enough twist
in the single?
Okay. So how would you know? And I think I know the answer, but I'm going to do this interview style, so I'm going to ask you, right? How would you know whether or not, let's say you have done some spinning project before, how would you know whether or not you are underspun or overspun for that? Let's say, I've got too many ifs.
Yeah, you do.
I've spun a 2-ply.
Yeah.
I have my skein from the previous project. How do I tell whether or not when I transfer to a 3-ply, I need more or less twist?
You would look at angle twist. This is something we're going to talk about on Wednesday.
Okay. Simple way. You taught me this. So, all right. So the whole thing of like holding up your skein and seeing how it twists on itself, right? So, okay, I'll answer my own question.
I can never remember. There's one way it turns that is under... There's not enough twist in the singles, and there's another way it twists that it's not enough twist in the plying. And I can't remember.
Well, I guess that depends on whether or not your S or Z twist when you start off.
Right, exactly.
Right? So we'll leave it at that. But
it's not something I worry about.
If you're
I have other ways to mitigate that.
The angle of twist, which we'll get to next time. Let's just put it this way to make it simple. If you hold up your skein after it's been spun and plied.
And washed.
And washed. And it sort of twists on itself.
Then the twist is not balanced.
The twist is not balanced, right?
Between the singles and the plying.
And we've got a comment from some of the spinners.
So if your usual is a 2-ply, yes. If your usual is a 2-ply, and then you want to make a 3-ply yarn, you're going to put less twist into your singles for a 3-ply.
So do you have a good bit of advice for people on what's a good way to put less twist?
A good way is to change your pulley on your wheel.
Okay. Make it pull faster?
No.
Oh.
Increase the size of your pulley. And then your wheel's going to put less twist in.
Right.
And you just have to make sure that you don't
Make that simple for me.
You go and you put your drive band on the bigger circle.
Thank you. Okay.
That is controlling how fast either your bobbin or your flyer is.
And that's going to make my bobbin or flyer go slower.
Slower. It's not put as much twist in. You just have to make sure you don't speed up your feet, because often when you go up to a larger pulley or a lower ratio, it makes it easier to treadle, and a lot of people... I'm sorry. A lot of people respond to easier treadling by spinning faster.
Gotcha. So, when what I've typically found for myself and other people is that your speed of your spinning is very well controlled by what you last had your wheels set up as and how fast your feet naturally go. So, to your point, the easier way, rather than trying to remember, I need to spin this a little bit slower. I need to make my feet move a little bit slower.
Yeah, that's hard.
Adjust the setting on your wheel so that the bobbin or the flyer is going
Yeah.
to spin slower.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's usually the best way.
Cool. By the way, I think we missed a comment from Kathleen before. She was telling me 2 plies don't mesh together tightly like 3 plies, and it's less
Right.
dense. That was another good way of
that's
describing
the whole lace thing.
The lace thing. Okay. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure we didn't miss any comments there. Okay. So
I want to make my argument for 3-ply yarn.
I think I've been doing that this entire time.
Yeah. Okay. Well, a lot of people were like, "Oh, I don't want to do 3-ply. You know, make the most of my fiber." And 2-ply, spinning a 2-ply is faster than spinning a 3-ply.
Yeah, because you get it done, you put it on 2 bobbins, and
no.
Also you need more bobbins, Jill. Like that's another. Okay, go for it. Make your argument.
First, make sure you have 4 bobbins.
Wait, why do we need 4 bobbins for 3-ply?
You need a bobbin to fly onto.
Okay, yes, that's all right. Fine.
It's an N+1 problem.
Yes.
Okay, here's my argument for why you should spin 3-ply. 3-ply yarn will take you less time. And this is my argument. 3-ply yarn, you don't need as much twist in the singles. So you're not going to be waiting for twists to enter your singles while you're drafting. Okay? That's part 1. And 2, when you're plying, you need less plying twist as well for a 3-ply yarn.
Because you get less single twist, okay?
Because you have less single twist. So plying goes faster.
Okay.
And then, because it's usually a thicker yarn, your project works up faster.
Okay.
And you get to a finished product sooner.
Okay, but I'm gonna argue. I have to have my yarn split up amongst 3 bobbins.
Nope.
Okay. If I don't have my yarn on my singles on 3 bobbins, how do I do it?
Well, if you have all your yarn on 1 bobbin, you can always make a 3-ply by doing chain ply.
Yes. Okay, that's cheating.
If you don't split up your yarn evenly among 3 bobbins, your singles among 3 bobbins, what I do is I start off as a traditional 3-ply, plying from 3 bobbins. Mm-hmm. If one runs out, then I take the bobbin that has the most left on it, and I will do a plying bracelet. That then turns that bobbin into 2 plies. And then 1 from there, and then I get a 3-ply.
Let me tell you, if you ever want some alone time, a plying bracelet is the best scam ever. Would you like me to go into this? So you are locked into your machine, right? Okay, so I don't know if you've ever dealt with a plying bracelet, but as Jill says, okay, you have your 3 bobbins. You run out of 1. You're left with 2 bobbins. Okay, so now you make this plying bracelet where you take the single that's on that 1 bobbin and you wrap it around your hand, right?
You're turning it into a center pole ball, basically. A very loosely wrapped center pole ball.
But you're also doing from the outside of the ball as well. So now you have the center coming from one part of your hand, the outside coming from another part of your hand, and then your other bobbin. Which means that you are literally locked into that machine. You cannot move until this is done. Kids, sorry, you gotta feed yourself. You know, husband, you gotta find your own pants. You are locked in there for good.
I might regret telling you this.
Yes.
But there are tools that are out there for doing plying bracelets.
Okay, don't let anybody else hear this because...
That don't require you to put it on your hand.
Okay.
So that you can walk away.
Yeah, but in this age where people don't ship anything except for Hipstrings, then
you can also apparently use stuff like a book and a stick.
Okay.
I feel really bad telling you this, that I know how to avoid being locked to my wheel.
We are sharing both sides of this information with you, so that you can use this information wisely.
But yeah, you don't need to carefully weigh out your fiber if you're going to make a traditional 3-ply.
You and I are going to have words later.
Yeah. Now you know all my secrets.
Yeah. A ball winder, yes. I guess.
Ball winders aren't good compared to doing a applying bracelet. The benefit of applying bracelet is that the amount of twist in both the inner and the outer single stays the same, whereas a ball winder, the single that you're pulling out of the center, depending on how you spin, it's either going to add twist or subtract twist from that single compared to the single that you're unwinding from the outside. Jillian Moreno has some really good blog posts about this, and it's why you should never do 2-ply from a center pull ball.
So Angela has a question, incidentally, of
Yeah.
if my normal yarn is a chain ply, how would I need to alter my singles for a traditional 3-ply?
You wouldn't need to alter your singles for a traditional 3-ply. It should require the same amount of twist, but what you may find is that you can go to a much faster pulley on your wheel for doing a traditional 3-ply compared to doing a chain ply, because you don't have all that extra time you need for the manipulation of the single that you do in chain plying, and so you can really zip through plying. Doing a traditional 3-ply yarn plying takes me so much less time than doing a 2-ply. Just because the 2-ply, it's additional yardage as well as additional twist. 2-plies seem to always take me forever, and I never put enough twist in for a proper 2-ply.
So there's another comment from Kathleen, and I'm not sure I understand it because I don't know what a breakdown bobbin is, but she's saying you can try using a ball winder and insert the shaft of a breakdown bobbin into the center, thus creating a third bobbin. Are you going to get the same issue that you were talking about before with the ball winder of the loss of twist or gain of twist?
If you're pulling from both the inside and the outside of the ball at the same time, yes.
Okay, and you don't get that with a chain ply, or with a
with
bracelet?
the plying bracelet? No.
Okay. All right.
Because of how it's wound.
Yeah, because you got all this weird zigzaggy thing going
It's
on.
overlapping loops.
Anyway, the bottom line is, you know what, we're trying to give, especially with everybody being in quarantine, and you just, a lot of
New
times,
skills to learn.
I find myself just needing some time alone. This gives you a visible indication.
I can't leave here.
I can't leave. I'm literally tied to the machine. So do with that as you will. We're giving you a gift. So apparently, Kathleen's talking about an Aquawork flat pack. So you would be
okay.
from
So
the
now I
outside.
see what she's doing.
Okay.
It's basically she's winding off onto a storage bobbin via a ball winder to create a third amount of singles. She's only pulling off as much as you need.
Okay.
And
as much as you would need, you would know from weighing it.
Yes, you could implement the use of a scale to figure this all out.
All these tools.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So should we review?
Yes, we should definitely review.
Okay.
So you should pick your plying not based on what makes you most comfortable, but what you're going to use the yarn for. If you're going to make a shawl, if you're going to weave with it, if you want to do lace, something like that, you want a 2-ply. If you want to make a sweater, you want something that's going to be hard wearing, you want to make some socks, you want to go 3-plies or more. When spinning a 2-ply yarn, you're going to be putting more twist, both in singles and in plying. You're going to be getting less color mixing. Okay? And you're going to, we already talked, you're going to have to put more twist in. For a 3-ply, you're going to get more color mixing. You're going to be putting less twist in.
So, to say you get more color mixing, now, I do want to just readdress that point because, we've lost a lot of the beautiful color separation here, and it's more of a continuous blend. If you want to still do, this is 2-ply. What am I saying?
No,
that's 3-ply. Never mind. Okay, yes. So if you still want to get a little bit more of the color separation, remember
You
This
can
is
spin.
both spun from the tip and a 3-ply. If you spin from the fold, it won't quite be as color separated as this, but it'll be a little bit closer. So you'll get a little bit more of that extra pop.
Yeah.
Um, okay. Uh, we had a question of, if I've never knit a sweater, how would I know how much fiber I need to spin up?
What I would do is, if you kind of know kind of your default what you spin, um, how many yards do you typically get from 4 ounces of fiber? I would then look at sweater patterns that kind of are close to that. If your default is, a 3-ply worsted, look for worsted weight sweaters.
And see how much yardage
and see how much yardage they require for your size. And then you can kind of figure out based on that. And I always include an extra 4 ounces. Because sampling, and you never 100% sure know what you're going to get.
But again, this goes into the grist question, right? Because you've got something that you've spun default before. You know how many
yards
inches
you
or
got
yards
per
pound, right? And then so if you look for the pattern, it tells you the yards. You know how much fiber to get from a poundage standpoint, right? If anybody needs us to go through that math, we certainly can. Maybe
and it's a math that works
questions.
pretty well, because I don't actually ever measure how much yardage I have in my skeins. I just have kind of a basic understanding of my grist, and for a particular type of fiber. I usually spin up about 24 ounces which is a pound and a half, for a sweater for Nick or I, which is a 42-inch chest. And I have always...
give away my measurements online.
I have always had leftovers. I've never run out of yarn on a hand-spun sweater. And I usually have about, 100 grams to 4 ounces of yarn left. So if I had just done the close, 20 ounces of fiber, I would probably be cutting it too close. So 24 ounces. And my grist, I don't have a very dense grist for my hand spun. Some people do. Mine is typically about 200 yards for 4 ounces for like a worsted weight. So I can kind of estimate based on that, and I've never been let down.
So in terms of measuring, by the way, you don't have to take a whole bunch of yards and try to get a pound worth of yarn in order to measure this. You can take like a foot. It's 3 feet to a yard. How many feet in a yard?
3 feet in a yard.
3 feet in a yard. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm science. I do metric. I don't know this. I don't know this English stuff. So you can take 1 foot of yarn, not very much at all, right? And take a small kitchen scale and measure how many ounces that is. 16 ounces in a pound, right? And then use that to get how many feet per pound or yards per pound by doing those conversions. And then go on from there. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So somebody asked their 3-ply fingering sweaters. So there definitely are. There are lots of fingering weight sweaters. I knit my first fingering weight sweater this past summer, which was a granito, which is kind of a loose drapey sweater. And I think that took about 4 skeins of discourse. It was not a hand spun sweater. And so that would have been about 1,800 yards, but it's only about a pound of yarn. So heavier weight sweaters, worsted, Aran, bulky, are going to take more weight than something that's a thinner yarn.
So I do want to address some of the other comments we've gotten. Tools are fun. Yes, they are. I like toys. You like toys? We all like toys. That's why we're in this business in the first place, right? Ken waves. Hey, Ken. Angela says that would be a lot of fiber. Yes, sweaters are actually a lot of fiber. But if you think about it, when you wear it, it's not that heavy.
No.
You're taking big amount of fluff. I wish you would have had your basket here of
Oh
everything you
gosh,
carded.
I
So that
haven't
you
even
see how.
carded it all yet.
Yeah, it
I'm
ends up being.
over. I have a tall Trofast bin. If you're fluent in IKEA, it's about this tall, about this wide, about that deep, and that is all full of fluffy little bits of fiber. And I still have about 6 more ounces to card. I dumped out and took a picture on Instagram today. If you want to see what my bats are looking like now, they're very pretty. They're spinning up really nicely.
Yeah.
So
Kathleen is saying she has the same 42-inch bust as the rest of us, apparently, as well as Ken. So it's the answer to life, the universe, and everything. Who, of course, everybody's got a 42-inch bust.
I default a finger and weight.
I think we need a T-shirt now that says like the 42 Bust Club. All right. Anyway. Yeah.
But saying that she usually 2 pounds of fiber will give her enough for a 3-ply sweater. Yeah, I'm short-ish. I am actually average height. Everybody keeps telling me I'm short,
including your niece.
Yeah. So I'm almost 5'6". And yeah, for me, 1.5 pounds of usually about a DK weight sweater is fine.
So then Angela is saying that she would love to be able to spin thicker, but thicker yards are not her strong area. So do you have any advice on... So
we're going to talk about this next time. Join us on Wednesday.
That's true. I will add the comment that one of the things that whenever I'm teaching anyone spinning, they always get so ashamed about like this thick, globby stuff that they make. And I always tell them, enjoy it, because when you get good at spinning...
It takes a lot more control to make a consistent, thicker yarn.
Yeah, you're going to be making dental floss and hate it, just like Angela.
Yeah. For commission for ply, I had to spin DK weight singles. I had only ever spun singles in a class before, so I knew the theory of it. Good, consistent singles take so much control, especially thicker ones. So,
and I will say, I've made the comment before that spinning is great because, spinning is easier than knitting because if you break your single when you're spinning, you just lay it back on top and you're good to go. When you break your yarn while knitting, there's all sorts of splicing and spit and blood involved. But if, on the flip side, if you're going for a certain thickness and you're spinning, you can't tink back.
Yeah, you can. You can.
Is reverse spinning nipsing? Have I coined a term?
Maybe.
Nips. It sounds a little dirty though. So, anyway.
But we'll talk about that on Wednesday. That with the appropriate tracking, you can spin thicker.
Ken is drawing wonderful attention to the bats on our wall. We'll keep those up until they're sold, until we get new ones.
Yeah.
This is from our bat sale. Angela has mentioned that she's blended 1 pound of fiber on her blending board in 2 days, and her arms are a wee bit sore.
Yeah.
You are welcome. People pay for that sort of exercise classes. So
I have a motorized carder, so that's why I've been able to get through about 1.5 pounds in the last couple of days.
So what you're saying is you're cheating.
I am definitely cheating.
But exercise, we all need exercise during this quarantine,
yes.
So you're welcome. And then Kathleen, Jill, you have me by 6 inches in height. Width is a whole other kettle of fishies. Yeah. I want to eat some fishies now.
You had fishies for dinner.
I know, and I want some more. All right. Yeah, good. So I think we covered everything. We're going to talk about angle of twist in more detail along with...
Wednesday is all about wraps per inch and angle of twist.
Yeah. See? You told me this was going to be like 15 minutes, and we're up at the 45-minute mark.
You made it go long.
No comment. I'm just having so much fun here with you.
You are.
Yeah. So, any other questions before I realize that I didn't look up a dad joke and panic about?
So you guys need to ask some questions while Nick looks up a dad joke.
Or I can think of one because I am a dad. See, I tell dad jokes all the time, and he laughs when I tell him that.
See, you guys should have come up with something to ask.
Oh. All right. So if you have any other questions, by all means, hit us up on Instagram, Facebook, in the comments here, or on Ravelry.
Yeah. Hipstrings on Instagram, Ravelry, Facebook.
Or Mr. Hipstrings on Instagram for me.
Yeah. If you have a specific Nick question.
You're looking at me like, why would anybody have a specific Nick question?
Oh, no.
Yeah, I'm just the interviewer here. This is your show. We'll have to do a series that is based on something I know, which is very little, so it'll be a very short series.
Advanced knitting techniques, because you are much more adventurous knitter than I am.
Yeah, maybe that is true. We very much have a. Okay, sorry, I'm going to take the bait before I go into this. Kathleen is saying knock knock. I'm going to say who's there. And now we got to wait for the internet lag. So, Jill is very much a product crafter.
Yes, I am very product oriented.
I am very process oriented. So I very much see something that I'm like, how did they do that? And I want to do it and figure it out. And then once I figure it out, kind of lose interest.
Yeah, you're
sometimes.
kind of okay with knitting a lace sweater over the course of many years, which would drive me insane.
Yeah. It took me, 4 years to knit that lace sweater for you? Yeah. But that one I only did while I was on business trips and literally just while I was in the air. It is an airy sweater.
It is a very airy sweater. Tarzan.
So, Tarzan who? It's just the slowest knock-knock joke of all time. It's great. I love it.
It's probably going to be better than our kids' knock-knock jokes because they haven't figured out. We were doing this at dinner. They haven't figured out that knock-knock jokes. No, I was having to explain it to Adrian that knock-knock jokes are all about wordplay.
Yeah.
Because Chris was, doing knock-knock.
We'll have to... you want me to do that now? But we can't have incepted...
Yes, we can.
Knock-knock
yes.
Jokes. All right. Who's there?
Banana Man.
Banana Man who?
Banana Man, eat your potato.
All right, so now we're gonna have to. You and I can play Kathleen. You do knock knock.
Knock knock.
Who's there?
Tarzan.
Tarzan who?
Tarzan Stripes Forever.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, so I was having. Adrian was trying to do the whole banana orange.
Yeah.
Knock knock joke. God. And he switched out orange for potato.
Potato, you glad I didn't say banana?
Yeah, and I was like, that doesn't work. You don't understand the structure of knock knock jokes.
Well, that's a little bit better than the previous version.
He's 9 years old.
Well, yes, okay. But knock knock.
Who's there?
Banana.
Banana who?
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 Knock knock. This is how it would go for I don't know how long.
It got to the point I have a t-shirt that has a door, a banana, a banana, a banana, an orange. Just so I could, give my kids a visual reminder of how the knock-knock joke is supposed to go.
And they still got it wrong.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so we've had way too many bad jokes already. This has now turned from the fiber and yarn art channel into the terrible child jokes channel. So with that, maybe we should sign off.
Yes.
Thank you very much for joining us this time.
Thank you.
Hopefully we'll see you on Wednesday. And stay safe, stay healthy, and have fun crafting. Have a good night.
Good night.